Hollow Knight Silksong is finally out, and as much as I love the bosses in Hollow Knight, most of them pale in comparison to just the average enemy in Silksong. Team Cherry really improved at making boss fights, and I wanted to talk about these bosses. So, I decided to rank them S tier to F tier to see how they compare to each other. Also, I decided I'm going to be ranking the bosses' soundtracks as well, because damn, does Silksong have some amazing music. What better way to start this video than the very first boss of Silksong, Mossmother. Okay, well, there's really not much to say about Mossmother, to be honest. She's a pretty simple boss fight. But that's really all you need for a tutorial fight, which is what she is. This boss does a good job at teaching the player the basics of Silksong while not going all out and filtering new players right at the start of the game. Honestly, one of the most crazy things about this boss fight is that they decided to give one of the easiest bosses one of the best soundtracks in the entire game. You're listening to it right now, and the song is called Strive. I don't know what it is, but the song has such a fast-paced and chaotic energy, it really makes you feel like Hornet. Now I'm gonna put Mossmother in D. I don't love the boss, but I also don't really hate the boss. It kinda just does what it does well as a tutorial boss. Now additionally, I'm gonna put its duo partner, Mossmother 2, in D as well, as I don't really feel any different about the two of them. Now on the other hand, I'm going to put the soundtrack for Mossmother, Strive, in A. It's just such a fun, chaotic piece that really puts you into the world of Silksong and prepares you for the rest of the game. Next up, we have the Bell Beast. Listen, as much as I love the Bell Beast, she unfortunately feels similar to Mossmother in that she's kind of another tutorial boss, and really isn't very tough. Her entire moveset consists of like 4 or 5 moves, and all the attacks are pretty simple. That being said, the fight is still fun, and dodging the falling bells makes the fight feel a bit more dynamic and less predictable. To be honest, I kinda just want to give the Bell Beast bonus points for being, well, just the Bell Beast, but I'm gonna try to stay fair and rank the bosses a little more objectively. And now for the Bell Beast soundtrack, titled Bell Beast. Well, it's pretty good. The horns feel menacing, while the strings give it a heroic feel that I think fits the fight pretty well. It's not one of the most memorable tracks in Silksong, but it's good for the fight it's in. For Bell Beast, I'm gonna rank her just above Mossmother in C tier. I like the boss, but there's nothing super special about the fight, other than it just being Bell Beast. Now similarly, for Bell Beast soundtrack, I'm also gonna put it in C, as I think it's a middle ground soundtrack in terms of Silksong's music, which is pretty high praise considering that the song is still great. That's just how good Silksong's OST is. Up next, we have the first Lace fight. And let me just say, by no means is this a bad fight. In fact, I think it's a really good fight, but in comparison to the later Lace fights, this one feels like child's play. On my first playthrough, I actually ended up beating this version of Lace on my first try, and I know a lot of people did have problems with this boss being difficult for them, so I'm not trying to say that this boss is easy. However, it is definitely one of the easier bosses of Silksong. That being said, it is definitely one of the harder bosses of Act 1. Lace is a very acrobatic boss, jumping around a lot, sweeping and swinging all over the place, and I just overall really love the flow of this fight. Another great thing about this fight is its soundtrack, and man, this is just a great one. The song sounds so playful, childlike, and whimsical, and that just also fits with Lace's character as well. Additionally, the strings in the background are kind of like spontaneous and sporadic, which fits Lace's fighting style quite a bit. Overall, I'm going to be putting this version of the Lace fight in B tier. It's a pretty solid fight, not the best the game has to offer, but definitely one of Act 1's best. And now for her OST, titled Lace, I'm going to be putting that just next to Strive, just above it in A. It's such a fun and playful track, and I just absolutely love it. Now, I had to look up if this next boss was even a boss. I was kind of confused, but yeah, turns out it is, and it's the Craggler. Let's just get this one out of the way. I'm not going to spend any time on this. Do I even really need to explain? If you don't know, all this boss does is shoot acid from the ceiling, and that's it. Personally, I think this is an F. It also doesn't have a soundtrack for me to rank, so nothing there. Alright, now next up, we have an actually real boss, and that is the 4th chorus. First, I just want to say that this is easily the most unique boss in both Hollow Knight and Hollow Knight Silksong. This thing looks like some sort of gimmick boss you would see in Dark Souls 2 or something. The biggest difference being it's actually a good boss. I absolutely love the way that this guy looks. Just all his different arms moving individually, and like the way it's animated makes it look like almost a 3D model. When I first saw it, it was really cool effect, and I overall really like this boss's design. Now, gameplay-wise, as I've said for most of the bosses in Act 1 so far, it's pretty easy. This boss really isn't all that difficult, but still a really fun one to fight. Like every good gimmick boss, this boss also has a gimmick mechanic, which is you can break a boulder above its head, which drops onto it and kills it. It's an overall pretty creative boss, but just doesn't really pose much of a challenge. For a boss with chorus in its name, I kind of expected a better soundtrack. It's definitely a very grand and cinematic song, which is fitting for this kind of boss, however, I do find it kind of forgettable. For my ranking, I'm going to put fourth chorus in A. I think that this boss is great. It doesn't have the challenge that an S-tier boss would require, however, I think that everything about the spectacle to the moveset of this boss is... it's amazing. Now for the soundtrack for fourth chorus, I'm going to have to go probably D tier. It's definitely forgettable. It's not terrible, but just not a massive fan of it. And now we have everyone's favorite boss. Listen, I'm not here to defend the Savage Beastfly, but I'm just saying I think it's a little overhated. It's definitely a very tough early game challenge, but I think compared to some stuff late game when you start getting better, it's really not that bad. Now again, I don't think this is a great boss. I'm not here to defend it. I just think that this boss's big saving grace is that it's an optional challenge. Now this boss's soundtrack, called Incisive Battle, is pretty good. It's fast, it's fun, it's exhilarating, it's definitely one of those songs that sticks with you once you beat the game. Ranking Savage Beastfly on the tier list, I'm going to put it just above Mossmother in D. It actually is pretty similar in terms of its moveset to Mossmother, except it brings that challenge that Mossmother doesn't have. Now ranking its soundtrack, Incisive Battle, on the tier list, I'm going to put it in B. I think it's an above average track that sticks with you throughout the game. As you might notice, this song, Strive, is back. It was first used on Mossmother, and now it's back again with Moorwing. A lot of bosses in Silksong have the same soundtrack, so this will happen quite a bit. Moorwing is the main boss of the area Greymoor, and honestly, this was the first major roadblock for me. I'm pretty sure before the recent patch, every single one of Moorwing's attacks did 2 damage. So I think nerfing a couple of its attacks down to 1 damage was a good call. Because this boss is pretty tough. Moorwing shoots blades out from his feet, swoops in from off screen, has a ton of range closing attacks, and even has a phase 2 where he shoots multiple blades. With all that being said, I actually found this boss a lot of fun. The complexity of this boss actually made me have to learn its movesets, and I found it a lot of fun to learn. On top of that, the big arena made it pretty easy to just run away when you were getting overwhelmed. Also, for extra help, you can summon in an NPC, Garmin and Zaza, and they're just the best. I think Moorwing's a really great boss, and so that's why I'm feeling a high B tier. I have very little negative things to say about this boss, but the bosses later get even better, which is why I can't put it any higher. Shh. That's what I'm saying, bro. Sister Splinter is another one of the very few bosses in Silksong that got nerfed. And I get the Moorwing nerf, but the Sister Splinter nerf always kinda confused me, as I never found this boss to be really all that difficult. I enjoyed this fight quite a bit. Her attacks are well telegraphed, the spiky vines add another layer of depth to the fight, and the enemy summons hit hard but don't have too much health. My only real complaint is Sister Splinter's lack of a moveset. She only has like one move, really, but I guess the real boss fight is all the surrounding things, like the vines and the enemy summons on top of that, so I'd say it's a full fight, just slightly lacking in move variety. Sister Splinter also has a really unique soundtrack. The song sounds so much more evil and darker than anything we've heard so far, and gives the boss a really sinister feel. I'm gonna put Sister Splinter in B, just below Moorwing, just above Lace. Solid fight, but there is better. And then I'm gonna put Sister Splinter's soundtrack, just for being so unique, at the top of B. I'm liking it. When it comes to duo fights, Team Cherry knows what they're doing. There are plenty of great examples of duo fights in Silksong, and the great Conchflies are one of them. Now to be clear, This fight is not the best in Silksong, it's just good, but it's definitely very exhilarating, and dodging 2 enemies at once can be very, very challenging. This fight is definitely a good test of focus and skill. This boss's soundtrack is Incisive Battle, which is the same as the Savage Beastfly, which I gave a B. The fight is quite exhilarating, and for a duo fight, it's pretty good. There's not a whole lot to the fight, so unfortunately I don't feel like I can give it a score too high. I'm going to put it here at the top of C. Now we're getting to the really good bosses. Widow is just an all-around fantastic boss. She's extremely mobile, she has lots of openings to punish. I love the attack where she throws bells down from the ceiling, and I mean just overall all her attacks are just a blast to dodge. It feels great. But man, my only issue with this boss is just she doesn't have very much health. Holy shit. Oh. Yeah, Widow has a fake-out death and a phase 2. I had to really lock in to beat this boss, but overall it was a really, really fun boss, and I had a really fun time just learning the moves. Now I haven't even talked about the soundtrack yet. The music in this fight couldn't be more fitting. I love the scrambling sounds of the strings, and what sounds like ever-growing tension throughout the whole track. It's also a really catchy song, and it's one of my favorites in the whole game. For Widow, I'm gonna put her up in S tier. I think she's just that good. And similarly, Widow's soundtrack, Widow, is also S tier in my opinion. It's great. The last judge is the last boss between the player and Act 2. In that regard, it's kind of like a skill check before letting the player enter into Act 2. That being said, the last judge isn't too difficult. It strikes a good balance between being difficult, but also easy to read. It only has a handful of attacks, but these attacks can come out quick, so it forces you to memorize them, and overall get a really good mastery of this boss's moveset. Then, when phase 2 comes along, you really get tested, as now all its moves now have explosions. I love this boss design, and also the build-up towards this boss is great. You see all those other judges on the way here through the blasted steps, and everything before this boss feels like it's building up towards it. The last judge's soundtrack, titled Last Judge, is also really great. It does a great job at emphasizing how menacing this boss feels, and it really feels like a fight for your life. To me, it's not really one of those tracks that sticks with you, however, it suits the boss well and really adds to the tension of the fight. Part of me wants to put Last Judge in A tier, but its moveset is just a bit too simple, so unfortunately I'm going to put it at the top of B. And for the Last Judge's OST, I'm going to put it in B as well, as I think it's quite good, just not the most memorable. I mean, what even really is there to say about this boss that hasn't been said before? To me, this boss actually feels like an evolution of the Mantis Lords from Hollow Knight. The way they move in sync and kind of telegraph very clearly what they're gonna do, it gives me the same kind of vibe, except this feels a step above that. This is one of those duo fights that feels like a singular boss. The first phase is a slow tutorial to how the fight works, and second phase is when it really picks up and starts getting a little more difficult. Not only does the fight feel great to play, but I also love the storytelling throughout the fight. You learn so much about these characters just through their moves. You know that they're lovers, they work well together, as all their attacks are in sync with each other, and when their third phase comes around, suddenly they're out of sync with each other, as if something had gone wrong between them. And in the final phase, when there's only one more dancer left, it's one of those bittersweet moments where you're happy you beat the boss, but you're also just feeling guilty for what you've done. It's similar to Seth from Dark Souls 1, where, you know, you finally beat the boss, but you don't feel great about it. Yeah, okay, anyway, I'm gonna put this boss in S tier. I think it's really great. It's one of my favorites in the game, for sure. Not difficult, but sometimes spectacle is important in a boss fight. This boss's soundtrack perfectly reflects the fight, and it goes without saying, another S tier song. There isn't a boss in Silksong that had me smiling front to back like Trobbio did. I love the fact that he's not some sort of massive threat or like demigod or some sort of greater being. He's just some dramatic dude who loves theater, but he still has relevance in the story as he's seen the downfall of the Citadel and the world around him and all of Farloom, and he wants to bring some life back into it. And he's succeeded in my opinion. All his attacks are explosive, colorful, dramatic. He's always keeping you on your toes and moving around. The fight is just an all-around blast, and I dare you to try find me a boss that has a better death animation than him. It's gonna be like, wow, that was a great show. Oh, no, he died. That's a damn shame. Trobbio's theme is amazing. The playful keys reflect the low stakes of the fight, and the whole sound of the track just sounds so whimsical and joyful, while at the same time sounding a little bit menacing, and almost hinting that Trobbio might have a darker side. This is a difficult pick for me, but I'm going to put Trobbio at the top of A. He borders on S tier, but unfortunately lacks the moveset depth for an S tier boss. And for his OST, I'm going to put that in S. It's just so great. It perfectly fits the playful style of Trobbio himself. The Unravelled is a hidden boss under the White Ward that's actually pretty hard to find. I actually didn't find this boss until the end of Act 3, because I was looking it up to find the last Silk Heart. This boss starts with a few enemies that attack you before the boss itself finally shows up, which I'm not crazy about, but it's not that big of a deal either. It's not a major deductor for me, but I don't love it. It's on theme with what the boss is, which is the souls of a bunch of tortured and tested on bugs, and they're so vengeful that they can't die, or something like that. The fight itself is okay, it doesn't have many moves, but don't underestimate it, because it can hit pretty hard, and is deceptively fast. The fight gets a bit more interesting in the second phase when it gets spears. It just serves as another obstacle that you have to deal with and makes the fight a little bit more involved. Overall, I'm not really a big fan of this fight. I think it's fine, I don't dislike it, but by Silksong standards, which are pretty high, it's not the best. This boss shares the theme song with Sister Splinter, so nothing to rank there. I'm gonna put this boss at the top of D tier. I think it's more interesting than Mossmother and Beastfly, so which is why it's at the top, but I can't really justify bringing it up to C. Oh my god. Oh my god, I won. Oh, I didn't win. They baited me, because of course they fucking did. Groal is notorious for his run back. Just to get back to this fight, you have to run through swamp water that puts maggots on you, that stops you from healing, a ton of enemies, a ton of platforming. It can be quite difficult. On top of that, you have to beat an entire arena before you can actually face the boss again. So yeah, it's safe to say this boss has been pretty controversial. How do I feel about it? I think the fight itself is okay. I think it's really cool that Groal uses soul in his fight, similarly to the Knight in Hollow Knight. And this boss also has a ton of really cool details, like you're able to throw a bomb into its mouth when it's using its suck attack, and you're able to attack it from the inside when it's sucked you up. Overall, I'd say this boss is not too bad. The only problems with it is everything around it. Even during the fight, Groal summons in enemies to attack you, and it just gets really overwhelming. They still spawn more enemies? What the fuck is that? Oh my god, man, Growl's OST is called Cut Through. This song plays on a lot of bosses with arena fights before the boss, so I think it sounds pretty fitting for that kind of feel. I don't know if the song has this vibe or if I just have PTSD, but the song really does sound like getting overrun by enemies. I love the melody on the strings, but the song is overall just a little too frantic to be like just casually enjoyable. Ranking Groal in the tier list, I'm gonna put him in D. He's fine as a boss, but everything around this boss is just kind of torture. And for the song Cut Through, I'm gonna put it here at B. I find it pretty similar to Incisive Battle, except I like it a little bit more, I think, so I'm gonna leave it right there. First Sinner and Widow both share the same soundtrack, which makes sense since they're both Weavers, and additionally, their fights feel very similar. First Sinner's found more late game than Widow, so naturally she's quite a bit harder. First Sinner feels faster, more aggressive, replaces the slow bells that Widow has with these sharp, quick needles, and it makes the fight feel super intense. The fight also isn't too punishing, because when you lose, it spawns you right outside the boss arena. But continuing with the similarities to Widow, Holy shit, I don't know if that's it. There could 100% be another phase. Yeah, there is. Ah! Yeah, just like Widow, this boss has a fake out death. In her phase 2, she gains this new rune ability, which creates this really cool moments of needing to like slip by the runes while you're dodging other attacks at the same time. This second phase makes the first phase feel like a tutorial for the boss, and this is the real fight. Another interesting thing about this boss is she can actually heal in a similar way to Hornet, where she'll bind, and you have to interrupt her before she can get it off. I have really almost nothing negative to say about this boss, it's just really, really fun to fight. Ah! This boss is fucking sick, dude. Yeah, so all in all, this boss just feels like an upgraded version of Widow, which is why I'm gonna put her in S. Great fight. Phantom feels like the Hornet of this game, meaning Hornet the boss in Hollow Knight. She's the size of the player, she moves in horizontal and diagonal movements, she throws her weapon forwards and lunges towards it, very, very similarly to how Hornet does in Hollow Knight. But this game being Silksong, you know it's taken to the next level. Phantom's quick, has the ability to parry you, and follows up those parries with quick slices. She later gains the ability to slam down from the sky in a big wave of steam, fitting considering the steam organ that she plays at the start of the fight. Speaking of the organ, there's plenty of it in her theme song. I love the tie-in between Phantom's organ and the song, and the entire area being themed around this giant steam organ. It's really cool. The song sounds so grand and so just epic. It makes a simple fight seem so much more, which I like. Phantom's a really fun fight, but a little too simple to be put in S tier, so that's why I'm gonna go middle of A. Similarly, I'm also going to be putting her soundtrack in A as well. It's a really fun one, and the use of the organ is super unique. Father of the Flame is an interesting boss, if you can even really call it a boss. All it does is, just stand there and shoot little butterflies out at you, which sounds really boring on paper, and yeah, it's really not the most interesting boss, but I do at least enjoy the challenge it poses. Hitting this boss doesn't give you any silk, so whatever silk you go into the fight with, that's what you have. The only moveset change this boss has is once you destroy all the lanterns on its arms, it starts shooting out a bunch of fireballs from its center, and that's really it. This boss doesn't really have a lot going for it, but I at least enjoy the challenge, and lore-wise, it's really intriguing to me. I'm gonna put this guy low D. He just really doesn't have a lot going for him, but I at least enjoy the challenge enough to not put him in F. Also, he shares a soundtrack with Sister Splinter, so nothing to rank there. After defeating the great Conchflies, one of the Conchflies survives and you see it fly away in the distance. Well, here it is. The Raging Conchfly is identical to the Conchfly duo fight, minus the duo. Although, I do think this fly's attacks are now faster, hence the name Raging Conchfly. That's not all though, this boss has a new gimmick. Now, instead of being a duo fight, it's a sextet fight. There's now 5 little baby Conchflies in the big mother Conchfly. Honestly, I'm starting to get tired of saying the word Conchfly, so let me wrap this up. This fight is just pretty good. I would say it's about on par with the original Conchfly fight, changing up the pace to be much more fast and much more precise, where you have to dodge multiple smaller enemies rather than 2 big ones. Dodging the small Conchflies as well as the big one creates a cool dynamic that the first fight didn't have, and overall I do quite like this fight. It's definitely not a standout though. Ranking this one, I'm gonna put it right next to the original Conchfly fight in C, just above it. I find the dynamic of dodging the big fly and the little flies just a little more interesting than the first fight. Next up, we've got Disgraced Chef Lugoli. Really, the only good thing about this boss is the ass attack, and then good things end there. This boss just feels gross to fight. The entire flow of the combat feels totally thrown off by the maggot balls she shoots out. The maggot balls stopping you from healing is just beyond annoying, and her moveset overall just isn't really that interesting. I do like the kitchen setting of the fight, I think it's quite unique, but all in all, I just really wasn't a fan of this fight in any way. I'm sorry, Ass Jim, but you're going in F. Chef Lugoli shares the same soundtrack as Groal. On the topic of nasty bosses, why not talk about Broodmother? Also, she has the same soundtrack as the last boss, so... I actually kinda like this boss. She has summons, but they die in one hit, so they're just a pretty easy way to farm a bit of silk. She doesn't move too quickly, but she hits pretty hard, striking good balance and difficulty. Similarly to Chef Lugoli, Broodmother shoots goop balls at you, except these goop balls only restrict your movement and don't do damage, which is way better than the goop balls Chef Lugoli shoots. She's honestly got a pretty decently diverse moveset, which is kinda surprising for such a random mini-boss. Like, to be clear, it's nothing crazy, but I quite like it. This boss isn't spectacular, but I like it quite a bit, so I'm gonna put it here in B. We're getting close to the end of the Act 2 bosses here, and I'm really excited to get into the Act 3 bosses. But we still got some left, so let's take a look at the second Sentinel. The second Sentinel is actually a lot of fun to fight. Their moveset's really cool, and they do a really good job at trapping you with their attacks. They've got a great combo of ranged and melee, so you can never really let your guard down. It's definitely a solid challenge, but not the hardest the game has to offer. There's always something so fun about fighting someone who was once a friend turned enemy. Also, we finally have another boss with a unique soundtrack, called The Choir. I love how triumphant and proud this song sounds. It sounds like a song belonging to someone of high prestige, which I think fits perfectly of someone who is technically the guardian of the Citadel. I feel like putting the second Sentinel up here in high A tier. Really, really great fight. Now I don't know where to put their theme song. Either in high B or low A. It's really quite good. I love the choirs, I love the strings, everything about it is great. I think I'm gonna put it in low A. It's a really, really good song. Christopher Larkin really did not miss with this soundtrack. Here we have the second Lace fight, and this one is great. To put it simply, it's just a step up from the first one. Lace feels overall more aggressive, has more combos than her first fight, and a bunch of new moves as well. Lace's attacks do a really good job at catching you if you jump around too much, and her phase 2 attacks make sure that you're precise with your movement, otherwise you're gonna get hit. I absolutely love Lace's arena as well. This place looks absolutely gorgeous. While this fight is just more Lace, Lace was already a great fight, and now she's just even better. Yet, there's still room for improvement, as we'll see later. I'm gonna put Lace 2 up here in A tier. Really good fight. We finally made it to the final boss of Act 2, Grandmother Silk. This is the big bad guy that the entire game is built up to, and seeing this boss for the first time was truly special. For a final boss, it's actually surprisingly easy, and I actually ended up beating her on my second try, I think, but it makes a little bit more sense when you realize there's an Act 3 and this isn't truly the final boss. This is one of the few bosses in the game with no contact damage, so you're able to get right up all in their business. This actually makes the fight a lot of fun, and you can play really aggressively. All of its attacks are really fun to dodge, and it's fitting for a boss like this to have the only 3 damage attack in the game. If I had to make a few criticisms about this boss, it would be that their rock falling attack, it makes the visibility a bit difficult, and just, again, that they're a bit too easy. It's hard to sell the illusion that you're fighting a god when you beat them on your second try. Grandmother Silk's theme, called Awakening, is just amazing. It sounds so grand and just perfectly fits with the feeling of fighting a god. The song sounds like a battle with everything on the line. Despite the fight's simplicity, I still really like it, which is why I'm going to be putting it in the middle of A. And for her theme song, I'm also going to be putting it in A, just above Lace. A great way to end the second act of Silksong. The Bell Eater is the first boss of Act 3, and weirdly, this boss really reminds me of the brooding Malek from Hollow Knight. The way it swings its arm to the side to hit you and shoots balls in the air, it's really all quite similar. The biggest difference being the Malek is fully mobile. The Bell Eater is actually part of the arena, as on each side you can see its body, and if you get too close, it'll try to attack you. It's a cool way to force you to watch your positioning. It's not the best fight in the game, it is pretty simple as the boss only has a few attacks, but it does feel like the next evolution to Bell Beast. This fight requires a lot of precision movement, which I know not a lot of people like, but personally, I find it quite fun. It's not the most exciting boss, but I still found it enjoyable, and also, that death animation is great. This boss is just a good fight. It's nothing incredible, but it's great. It feels like an evolution of Bell Beast, which is why I'm going to put it up here in B. It's a solid fight. The Pinstress is actually a surprisingly good fight. She's extremely mobile, has a very versatile moveset. I love the fact that she uses the cloak to float similarly to Hornet, which is fitting considering Hornet got that ability from a Pinstress. She likes to float around in the air, which is a great test of your aerial combat skill. It's a very engaging fight front to back, and I like it quite a bit. Only downside is I don't think there's any sort of phase change throughout the fight, so once you get it down it does get quite simple. But for an optional side mini-boss, I'm quite impressed. This is why I'm going to put it at the top of B. Having the same moveset throughout the fight does unfortunately bring it down a little bit, but I was overall really impressed with this optional side boss. Tormented Trobbio does everything the original Trobbio fight does, but better. Like turn Trobbio purple, because that's my favorite color. All his basic attacks now leave trails which do post-attack damage. In fact, all of his attacks have pretty much been altered in some way to make it harder. His bombs now shoot out in 4 directions, where before it was only 2. He now shoots 2 giant lasers when he does his firework attack. And now there's just overall way more on screen for you to dodge at once. I love this evolution of his character as it just feels so fitting for a guy like him. And I'm just really happy with this fight as it turns the original Trobbio fight into a real challenge. Also, I love how throughout his theme song you can hear his name being chanted by the choir. It's just so fitting for such a narcissistic character. And speaking of his theme song, I think it's really great. It's so dramatic, which is perfect fitting for Trobbio, and it really feels like the stakes are high this time compared to the first fight, which was more playful. However, just in terms of song sound, I do still think I kinda prefer the original Trobbio soundtrack over this one. I just love the playful energy of the first. Ranking Tormented Trobbio on the tier list, I'm going to put him in high A, above the original Trobbio. While I do think this version is just a little bit better, I don't think it's quite S tier, as it is still quite similar to the first fight, with a few changes. In ranking Tormented Trobbio's theme, I'm going to put it here just above Strive in A, a perfectly dramatic song for the most dramatic character. The Crawfather summons you to his courtroom in Act 3 for causing the destruction of Farloom. However, instead of a proper trial, he just decides to try kill you. This fight doesn't start with the boss itself, but rather a gauntlet of enemies first. Unlike most enemies in this game, these guys actually came prepared, and most of them are wearing a crown of thorns, which stops you from pogoing on their heads. And to me, this actually made the fight quite difficult because I tend to use pogoing quite a lot, as you can see in this footage. After surviving around 4 or 5 waves of enemies, the real boss comes out. And man, he is tough. And sure, one of those reasons might be because you can't pogo on him considering his crown of thorns, but no, it's because he is constantly surrounded by enemies. There is almost no time in this fight where you can fight this boss alone. You always have an enemy on you. Now, as much as this boss is insanely difficult, I actually beat it first try, and I don't know how. I really had to lock in. Like, I was shocked that I beat this boss. I actually really like this boss's gritty atmosphere. The arena is dark and grimy, the sound effects are all metallic and sharp. The boss on its own would be just, a bit too easy without all the summons, so I understand why there's a bunch of extra enemies in the fight, but it can make it pretty annoying. That being said, I did first try it, so maybe it's not too bad. To anyone struggling with this boss, use your tools. It can be hard to get close to this guy, so tools are really great for closing in that range. Also, I just wanted to shout out this move here real quick. I absolutely love it. Oh my god. Some might say this boss is unfair, and I can't totally agree, but I can't help but have a soft spot for it as I think it's just so cool. Ranking Crawfather on the tier list, I'm gonna put him in B here just below Lace. I actually kinda like this boss, and I know that's probably a hot take, but I enjoy a good challenge. I would barely even call Plasmified Zango a boss fight, but technically he is considered one. I do like the foreshadowing to this boss, and the fact that it's just tied to a NPC quest. I think it's cool all in all, but overall the fight itself isn't all that interesting. The gimmick that you have to use the plasmium syringe on him is cool, and it makes the fight, at least different, but, it's nothing like that competes with the top tier bosses of this game, really. Lore-wise, it's pretty cool, but I really can't feel comfortable putting this guy in anything above F, so sorry. And for his soundtrack, well, he doesn't have one, so nothing there. The Clover Dancers are the sequel to the Cogwork Dancers, and unlike most sequel fights, which are normally one-ups to the original fight, I unfortunately think this one is a slight downgrade. It's by no means a bad fight, but it's missing all the cool phase changes that the original fight had. It does have a cool new move where they meet together in the middle and create a tornado, which I think is pretty neat and keeps you a little more involved in the fight. Also, it's a cool moment story-wise to see the actual two Clover Dancers fighting together. But other than that, it's kinda just the Cogwork Dancers but minus the phase changes. And on top of that, minus the music. I think the theme for this fight is good, I definitely don't have anything wrong with it, but compared to the first fight, I don't think it's quite as good. I know I've been talking down on this boss fight this whole time, but I want to make it clear, I don't think this is bad, not by any means. If Cogwork Dancers wasn't in the game, I would think way more highly of this fight. The fight is still good, so I'll put it at the bottom of A. It's not S tier like its counterpart though. And for their theme song, I'm gonna put it in the middle of B here. I think it's quite good, very emotional, which fits these two enemies well, just doesn't live up to the Cogwork Dancers theme. The entire Palestag fight consists of chasing it down while dodging projectiles, and really that's it. It's not a very interesting boss, but it is a very pretty looking boss. I don't have a lot to say about this guy, cause, to be real, there's really not a lot going on in this fight. It's just boring, and to be honest, I kinda forgot it even existed until making this video. There's nothing atrocious about it, so it feels kind of rough putting it in F tier, but it really just doesn't have anything going for it, so I am gonna be putting it down here in F. Sorry. Crust King Khann, where do I even start with this boss? I feel like there's so much to say. First of all, before you can even fight this guy, you gotta go through a massive gauntlet. Now fortunately, once you beat this gauntlet, you don't have to do it again, as you unlock a shortcut, which is nice. The cool thing about this gauntlet though, is that it consists of basically entirely unique enemies to this area, so it made fighting the gauntlet really cool as you were constantly seeing new stuff. Now, onto the actual boss himself. Khann is a really great fight. I've always had a soft spot for earthbending abilities, so seeing a boss do that is really cool. I love bosses that force you to reposition and really use all your movement abilities to their fullest. Positioning is really important in this fight. If you're standing in the wrong spot, you're either going to get hit by his coral or he's going to land on you. In the second phase, it can get pretty overwhelming, as he uses even more coral in this phase, as well as he starts getting faster. That's not to say the fight ever gets too hard. I ended up beating this on my second try, as his moves are pretty easy to read and he leaves you with a lot of pretty easy healing openings. Definitely not one of the hardest bosses of Act 3, but definitely one of the most fun. The music really makes you feel like you're fighting the ruler of a kingdom. Something about the trumpets makes the song feel royal, and match the ever-growing pace of the fight as it speeds up. Ranking Crust King Khann on the tier list, I'm gonna put him at the very top of A. A really fun fight, but doesn't have that difficulty that an S tier boss needs, in my opinion. And ranking his soundtrack on this tier list, I'm gonna put it at the very top of B. I think it's a really fun one, just not necessarily the most memorable. It just suits the fight it's in very well. Skarrsinger Karmelita is just great. I don't think there's another boss in Silksong that I had to lock in so hard to beat, other than maybe one. I feel like Karmelita forces you into such a unique playstyle. I feel like I was constantly clinging onto walls and jumping over her attacks, but I couldn't settle with that playstyle too soon because she would immediately pull out a new move that would punish me for that playstyle, and I constantly had to switch and try new things. On seemingly random, Karmelita will just block some of your attacks, which at first is like, what the hell? But then I realized it's so that you don't just go in and poker one hit at a time, and you actually find openings where you can stay aggressive and get multiple hits in. Design-wise, she's super interesting, and without some sort of crazy gimmick, she still feels super unique. By the time Phase 2 rolls around, you've already figured out the playstyle you have for this fight, and her new moves in this phase don't interrupt that playstyle. They just act as new obstacles that you have to learn. She's an absolute blast to fight, and she's one of those bosses that puts you into like a flow state. I had to retry this boss plenty of times, but I never got bored of it because of this amazing soundtrack. Not only does it sound beautiful and is super unique because there being like a lead singer in the song, but it's extra cool because Karmelita is the person singing in the song herself. And it's not like they just randomly decided to make her a singer. It's an entire part of her character and her story. It's just these small details that add so much. Ranking Karmelita, I'm gonna put her an S. In my opinion, she's pretty much a perfect boss. Now, ranking her OST, I'm gonna also put that in S. I think it's just such a great detail that she's the person singing in her own song. Just adds so much. Gurr the Outcast is a fun surprise late game boss. This boss traps you and pulls you into his arena. It's a moment that really comes out of nowhere, and I found it quite surprising. I liked it quite a bit. The fight itself, though, is nothing crazy. His moveset's relatively simple, and the only really engaging part of the fight is the traps that he throws around the arena. They really force you to watch your positioning. Gurr doesn't really have many moves other than just throwing and using traps, which makes sense considering he is a hunter, but after fighting for about a minute or two, you've really seen all the boss has to offer. Although I do really like the bonus detail where, after you beat the boss, you see all of his trophies that he's collected, and how you were going to be one of them. Unfortunately, this boss is just a bit too simple to be considered great in my opinion. It's a fun surprise, but nothing too crazy. I'm going to put him at the top of C tier. Now, before we rank Nyleth, we of course have to rank her guardian, Seth. To those who somehow don't already know, Seth is based off of a real person. They were a big fan of Hollow Knight and got to meet Team Cherry, where he pitched them an idea for a character for Silksong, named after himself, Seth. Sadly, Seth Goldman passed away later that year, to cancer. He unfortunately never got to play the game, but he did leave a big impact on it. So, how is the boss? He's absolutely great. Seth's shield is so cool that it's not only a defensive tool, but it's also a weapon. Seth is fast and can teleport around, making it hard to chase him down, so it's better to just let him come to you. Team Cherry really did Seth's character justice, as he's a ton of fun to fight. He's constantly keeping you on your toes and you can never relax. Seth shares the same theme as Nyleth, and while the song is called Nyleth, I actually think it fits better as Seth's theme. The song is tragic and just absolutely heart-wrenching, especially later in the song where everything swells up. Seth is an absolutely beautiful fight, which is why I'm going to put him here in S tier. And for the theme song, I feel the exact same way, S tier. After beating Seth, you encounter Nyleth. This is an interesting fight. I like this fight because it requires a different playstyle from most other bosses. In the first phase, you got this little bit of solid ground here, but the most important thing you'll be using in this fight are the walls. It's pretty important for dodging a lot of her attacks, and walls only become more important in the next phase. Once phase 2 comes around, the floor is completely taken away from under you, and now you're reliant on the wall. If every boss was like this, I could see it getting a bit annoying over time, but this boss is pretty unique, as there are no other bosses like this in Silksong. Since you have to fight this boss clinging onto walls, it's well designed for that as well. She has moves that only reach across half the arena, so you have to retreat to the other side. She has moves you can dodge vertically, so you can move up and down the walls. And the boss is constantly switching which side of the arena she's on, which changes things up. Nyleth is a well-designed gimmick fight, but doesn't offer too much of a challenge, which is why I'm feeling high B. We're finally almost at the last boss, but before we get to that, I wanted to mention a couple mini-bosses that I didn't think were deserving of their full, entire own segments. Let's start first with Watcher at the Edge. For such a hidden mini-boss, he's a little bit underwhelming. Definitely cool though. I love his massive uppercut attack that lifts sand into the air and it goes flying off into the wind. Everything about it is pretty cool looking, it's just the fight itself is pretty basic. Watcher at the Edge is going in C tier. Now we have Garmund. The first time you encounter Garmund and Zaza, they're actually just friendly, you're just doing a friendly fight. And yeah, it's incredibly easy. I mean, it's not meant to be hard, it's just a fun little fight between friends. But the second time you encounter Garmund, he's corrupted by Void, and the only way you can free him is by killing him. It's a really sad moment, and he's actually quite a bit tougher than his first fight. Not hard by any means, but, you know, more of a challenge. Rest in peace Garmund, but you're going in D tier. Next up, we have another NPC fight, Chakra. Similarly to the first Garmund fight, you're fighting Chakra as a friend, but she doesn't hold back. Chakra is incredibly fast, she's teleporting all over the place, throwing projectiles everywhere. For a friendly fight, Chakra has some really bad manners. I'm gonna put her in C tier, she has a surprisingly decent moveset. And now, Cygnus and Gron. Oh my god, these guys are annoying. Everything about this fight, to the falling lava in the arena, the enemy summons that come in, just everything about this fight is built to be annoying. Like, I don't mind the movesets of these guys on their own, but with everything going on in the fight, it's just a shit show. But for some reason, I'm still gonna give them a D. They're still a full fight, unlike most of the bosses in F tier. Next up we have Voltworm, F tier. And we would have summoned Savior here, but unfortunately it's a Steel Soul only boss, and I've tried so many times to get to this boss, but I keep dying in Steel Soul mode, so unfortunately I have not fought this boss, so I can't rank it. Without further ado, on to the final boss. Lost Lace takes everything you've learned from the previous two Lace fights and throws it out the window. Jump over her poke attack and attack her from behind? Well, now she has Void Tendrils behind her. Now, on top of that, she does 3 dashes. So you might just be thinking, okay, we'll just jump over them. But you can't always just do that, because sometimes she'll punish with an upwards attack, punishing your jump. In my opinion, this is a pretty cool way to make a returning boss feel fresh and new, while still maintaining a significant chunk of their old moveset. It feels like you can never predict what Lace is going to do next, because she's constantly changing up her combos. I think one of Lace's most interesting combo switch-ups is her parry attack. When she parries one of your attacks, she'll always follow up with an attack of her own. It's pretty easy to dodge with a simple jump. However, sometimes at random, she'll follow up like this, which stops you from being able to jump. It makes the fight feel ever evolving, and you can never really settle into one rhythm. You're constantly readjusting your approach. I also really like the way the Void is incorporated into this fight. Whereas most enemies with Void just have a few preset Void attacks, Lace has new, fully unique Void moves, which completely changes up the feel compared to her first 2 fights. And as the fight progresses, Lace gets even more new Void attacks. It adds a whole new level of challenge on top of an already difficult fight. But I think that's fitting for the final boss of the game. I also really love the aesthetic of this fight. Everything in the scene is either black or white, which gives the fight such a somber and serious feel. And Grandmother Silk hanging in the background is just so cool looking. If I had to critique something about this fight, it would be that in the second phase, when things are getting a bit more hectic and there's a lot more on screen, visibility can be pretty rough. As with all the black particles on screen, it's easy to lose a fully black boss like Lace. It doesn't ruin the fight, not at all, but it's worth noting. Want to know what else is worth noting? This soundtrack. Lost Lace's theme sounds so tragic. I love how the song starts small and as the fight progresses grows more and more emotional. It's a perfectly cinematic song for the most cinematic boss in the game. This was the hardest boss in the game for me. I think it took me around 2 hours to beat. So yes, while it is very hard, I think that's perfect for a final boss. It's so satisfying to learn and counter these moves. I'm putting Lace at the top of S. I think she's the best boss in the game. Although, that's not an easy decision to make. And for her soundtrack, I'm also going to put that in S. Not at the top, but it's very, very good. And there it is, pretty much every boss in Silksong ranked. What a great game, and I cannot wait for what bosses await us in the DLC. Looking at this list, there's just so many great bosses, and even the bosses in C tier top most Hollow Knight bosses in my opinion. On top of that, the OST in this game is just amazing, and I hope Team Cherry keeps working with Christopher Larkin on future projects. If you made it this far into the video, thank you very much. I know it's a long one, but that's how long it takes to rank every boss in this game. If you're interested in more Silksong videos, I will be making more, so hit subscribe if you want to see that. And if not, just leave this video a like, it would help a lot. Can't wait to rank the DLC bosses in 3 years.